2 hours before midnight is when you clean your brain. So this is the glymphatic cleaning process. It's one of the most important findings in sleep science. And your brain will make these little tiny pulsatile squirts of adrenaline like every 50 minutes that pushes the fluid, the cerebral spinal fluid, through your brain like a washing machine, and it cleans out all the sticky plaques and tangles that build up throughout the day. So this is really, really highly important.
Hello and welcome to the Biohacker Podcast. I'm Azra, your host and founder of Biohacker. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach specializing in longevity for women, a health and wellness journalist, writer, corporate consultant, and a biohacking advocate. Biohacker is a space where we can explore ways to optimize our health to live well longer. Whether it's through improving our nutrition, exercising, cryotherapy, supplementation, technology, and more, I'll be bringing you information and interviews with the best longevity experts to help you understand what you can do to optimize your health, prevent disease, and slow down or even reverse the symptoms of aging by taking control of your unique bio-individuality. Want to know more? Let's dive in. Dr. Jemma King, welcome to the Biohackher Podcast. Tell us a bit about yourself and why you decided to write your new book now, Sleep First. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, it's been a long journey, and I actually started off as a stress researcher, and I'm a research fellow at the University of Queensland, where I do lots of research looking at what are the factors to human performance. And, sleep eventually found out to be one of the most primary fundamentals of human performance. And I didn't realize this. So I hate sleep. I find it really boring. I find it incredibly boring. And there's so many other really exciting things you can do rather than sleep. But I was looking at my data. I saw something really interesting. I saw that there wasn't one person who I met who had a sleep disorder who didn't eventually succumb to some kind of mental health disruption. And every single person who I met and in my data set who had mental health disruption had some kind of sleep disorder. So I said, this is a really huge correlation that I can't ignore. So then I became very interested in looking at sleep. And so I've done lots of research projects, and I consult and do workshops and evangelize the the concept of going to bed regularly and early. I myself have 3 children, and so I really know, understand how hard it is when you've got little babies, and mine are big now. And then when they become teenagers, of course, they come home late and wake you up. But I know how hard it is, particularly for women. We've got so much of the burden on us, caring, working. We do the mental labor, making sure that the emotional climate of our homes are good. So we just have so much unseen pressure on us, which really does affect your sleep, your hormones. And we get this kind of vicious cycle where stress then, impacts your hormones, hormones impacts your sleep. Sleep impacts your hormones, impacts your stress. So it is a vicious circle, and it's really hard to pattern interrupt and get out of that. But I think, if you want to try anything, if you want to get the most bang for your buck, if you want to really, really change the quality of your life, your mental health, your physiology, sleep is really the first place to start.
I completely agree. It's often when I'm asked what's my number one biohack, I always say sleep, because nothing else is going to work unless you get a good night's sleep and ensure that you've got quality sleep. What's happening biologically that makes women more vulnerable to sleep disturbances? Because as I understand it, women are always twice as likely to experience insomnia than men. Is that right?
Yeah, it depends on what study you're looking at, but we would say safely, about 1.4 times or, 40% higher than men. And that's the reason being is that much of our ovarian hormones act on the centers of the brain that code for sleep in a way that men do not. And so we also carry twice the rate of anxiety and depression as men. And we also have high propensity to be disturbed in our sleep. So during luteal phase, progesterone, that actually promotes GABA, which GABA is the brain's kind of like brake pedal. And so during hormonal fluctuations, perimenopause, menopause, and certain parts of your ovarian cycle, you get a plummeting of progesterone, which then changes your ability to thermoregulate, increases your sleep disturbances. Often women get restless leg syndrome. So there's a constellation of factors that are really impacting your hormones. And, it's something that we really have to be super aware of, that we might be doing things in our daily life that we don't realize that are really affecting our sleep and our hormonal status.
Because it seems to me that quite often people just accept the fact that they've had a bad night's sleep and don't necessarily think proactively to try to identify, well, why am I having a bad night's sleep? Is there anything I can do about it to improve it? Or they just sort of perceive that this is life, this is how it's going to be, and this is just me.
Yeah, I think we've got to be careful though. If you are having persistent bad night's sleep, 100%. But I have worked with people, particularly elite athletes, that have one night of bad sleep and then just fall to pieces. Or, or someone goes into work and they've got a big meeting, or they've got big decisions to make, and they're like, oh my God, they're catastrophized one night of bad sleep. So much that what I call sleep deprivation is one thing, but sleep deprivation anxiety is a double whammy. And you need to deconflate those two things, in that if you do have one night of bad night's sleep, instead of looking for evidence that, your day is ruined, you look for evidence that you actually feel pretty good. And remember, maybe when you're in your early 20s, you'd stay up all night for fun. So I think your mindset around your sleep is very important. And we know that one of the greatest predictor of next day performance is how well you think you do on no sleep. And so you really should be very careful if you have a bad night. Be okay with that. 2 nights, 3 nights, yes, you're going into some very dangerous territory where sleep deprivation has so many second and third order effects, not only on our physiology, but the way we see the world, the way we perceive risk, the way that we are able to prioritize what's important, perceptions of generosity. We actually perceive people's faces as more negative when we're sleep deprived than when we're not. So in one of my workshops, I show someone's face. I put it into AI and I said, give me a blank face. And then I asked, what's this? What emotion is this woman displaying? Invariably, the sleep deprived people think she's suspicious, she's negative, she's anxious. The men always say desire.
Of course.
No, men have a propensity to see desire where it does not exist. But I'm like, no, that's actually a blank face. And your sleep deprivation status actually goes into how you see the world. And also what's interesting, when you're sleep deprived, you produce much more cortisol the next day. And that means that people can actually, through chemo signaling and emotional contagion, people pick up your emotions. And we have receptors on our skin and in our paranasal sinuses that pick up your emotion. And so people are less likely to want to spend time with you or be generous with you or hang out with you when you're sleep deprived. And people don't realize that. They think maybe it's hidden, nobody knows. But from my research, it's not true. People feel less trusting of you.
Wow, that's fascinating, because that could have so many broader implications, not only in your personal social life, with your family and your friends, but I'm thinking in a work environment, right? What are you seeing there?
Well, instead of people thinking that, this woman is decisive or, she knows what she wants, people will perceive it as she's being nasty. She's just a cranky old, add in the bleep. Yeah. And then couple that with, you got fluctuations in your hormones. And what I call, for women, this time in their life is I call the sandwich stress moment, where you've got stress from below, you've got stress from the sides, or stress from the above. You're often in more high leadership positions. You've often got the primary caregiving of your parents, or you've got kids in high school. You're doing year 12. And this is just what I call a Molotov cocktail of stress this time. Then with the hormones, you can see a lot of women start to feel, I suppose, overwhelmed, unhinged, like what's it all for? And the weight of the world is on them, and they don't have the biological support. And that's when a lot of the sleep issues start to kick in as well. The disrupted sleep, the inability to thermoregulate, hot sweats, and just up all night worrying about, the big things in life. So, yeah.
You touched on anxiety around sleep and getting anxious over the fact that one might not get a good night's sleep. What are your thoughts on wearables and people tracking their sleep? Because I know quite a few people who, when they first started wearing a wearable and started to track their sleep, they became extremely anxious about their sleep scores. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a word for orthophobia. So I do like wearables because I'm a researcher. And so in order for me to be able to like quantify something, change something, do interventions, I need to know the baseline. And so I've been using the Whoop device since about 2017. We're in fact the first Whoop wearers in Australia. So Whoop is out of the US. It's probably one of the most best validated devices. And so I like it because what happens is during different parts of your sleep architecture, there's, light sleep going down to deep, slow wave sleep, going to REM sleep. And there are so many things that we're doing in our daily life and at night that stops us from getting into that deep, replenishing, slow wave sleep. And if you don't know how much slow wave sleep you're getting, you could be having consequences. You could be having mental health issues, physical issues that are 100% related to the inability to get that sleep, and you have no idea. So I think in the interim, if you do have any sort of mental health or physiological disorder, I would strongly recommend getting a sleep tracker for 6 months, and then you know where you're at, and then you can try some individualized interventions that are specifically designed for your body, your lifestyle, and the stresses that you're under. But after that, once you know it, I don't think you need to keep up with it. But there are, some elite athletes that I was working with in the lead up to the Olympics that were getting so freaked out about their data that they would have anxiety about it. The anxiety would actually be the thing that ruined their performance, because, these are really high achieving people, and you wake up and you see red, fail, that mentally puts them in a very precarious position. So for some of the athletes, we would blind the app for them, but then, the team would be able to see their physiology. But yeah, it is a thing. There's some people that won't do anything unless their tracker tells them they can. And in fact, I was working with a very prominent CEO from a multinational company, and he would look at his Whoop, and if he was in the red, he would not have certain conversations or wouldn't bring up things in meetings or would avoid performance reviews or that if there was contentious issues. So he would really live his life. I mean, it was probably good for his staff, probably drove his wife completely bonkers, but yeah, so. And I think that, cortisol's terrible. Stress hormone is terrible. If your device is increasing your cortisol, well, that's counterintuitive, and that's the worst thing for sleep. It's the worst thing for recovery. So you do know yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You touched on the various stages of sleep. Can we just break that down a little bit more detail for those that don't understand what REM sleep is, a deep sleep, slow wave sleep? Can you just walk through what they are so that people can understand it a little bit better before we dive into some of the fixes that people can achieve?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, a lot of people think that you just go to sleep and you just like crashed out, sedated for the whole night. But I don't think people realize that you have these sleep cycles. They're hopefully, around 90 minutes per cycle. And hopefully you get 4, 5, 6 of them a night, depending on how much you sleep. And so you start off awake and then you go into light sleep. So this is the alpha brainwave. So for those who, know this feeling, it's when you're in this dream state, you're relaxed, you feel like you're sort of slipping. It feels like it's a really nice feeling. And then you'll go down into, so it's divided by non-REM sleep and REM sleep. So there's non-1 down N2, N3. And so through these stages, you slowly get deeper and the brain waves get slower. And these are when you get things like sleep spindles. So it's all measured in brain waves. So these little firing of unusual like crackles in your sleep data. And these are designed to help you consolidate memories. So if you've been learning a skill or if you've been doing something physical, it's what helps your brain push those lessons into your long-term memory banks. Then you've got K complexes. So these are big, sharp spikes on your way down to sleep, and they're kind of like the brain's security guard. So if you hear a car door slam or a dog bark or the possum run over the roof, this K complex will like check, is this something dangerous you need to wake up, or is this something I can protect the brain and let you get into the deeper waves of sleep?
I think my K complexes are out of control, just saying.
Yeah.
I'm a very light sleeper and it'll wake me up.
Yeah, and so these are also very correlated. These two brain waves are correlated with dementia. So we see that we call spindle dwindle. So the older you get, you have less of these, and we think that could be correlated with learning, dementia and inability to remember things. But this is all still very new science. Then when you go down into deep slow wave sleep, so this is like, it's kind of like your brain's own wellness retreat, and it's incredibly important. And if people don't remember anything from this podcast, remember this one piece of information. It's the most important. In the 2 hours before midnight is when you get most of your deep slow wave sleep. This is where you produce 70 to 80% of your growth hormone. So people think, oh, isn't that the stuff that makes, children's legs grow longer? And I'm like, yes, but it also does an incredible amount of duties in an adult. It's what helps you replenish your blood, your bones, your cells. It makes you repair. It's implicated in thousands of processes. And as I said, there's this window of opportunity where this growth hormone gets secreted. It's like the highest magnitude. Now, if you miss that window, you may make up for it throughout the next 24 hours in short little pulsatiles of it, but you don't get that big bolus, that big magnitude, which is incredibly important. So that's one thing. Also, during that deep, slow wave sleep, 2 hours before midnight, is when you clean your brain. So this is the glymphatic cleaning process. It's one of the most important findings in sleep science of our lifetime. So basically, they found that during this time, your cells in your brain will squish back. So you've got 60% more space in between your cells in your interstitial spaces. And your brain will make these little tiny pulsatile squirts of adrenaline, like every 50 minutes, that pushes the fluid, the cerebral spinal fluid, through your brain like a washing machine, and it cleans out all the sticky plaques and tangles that build up throughout the day. So this is really, really highly important and correlated with dementia. So if you're not getting this special brain cleaning window, you are in big trouble over time. And we'll see this from big data sets. So just imagine if there was a alleyway and there was all these cars parked, or cars driving down this alleyway. And then at night, the cars park off to the side so the street sweeper can come through and goes and sort of gurneys away all the gunk. That is incredibly important. So this is also what happens at this time is throughout your day, you're using brain energy. And for people who can remember back to biology, it's called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, is what our brain runs on. And so this little thing, this molecule breaks apart, has a little explosion in your head. And what's left over is this cellular repair, like this cellular buildup, exhaust. And it is called adenosine. I don't know if anyone's heard of this, but this is really interesting stuff. So adenosine builds up all throughout the day when you're thinking and moving and doing any kind of brain power. And this residue just builds up into your brain. And the adenosine's kind of like Mother Nature's dimmer switch. It's the stuff that makes us feel slow and, like start to, slow down and feel tired. And we know that adenosine actually gives you an impending sense of doom. When you're tired and everything feels so much worse? Well, this is because of adenosine. So if anyone knows anyone or has a heart condition, adenosine is actually also used as a heart medication for tachycardia. And when doctors administer this adenosine, they say to the patient, don't worry, you're not going to die. You're okay, because it makes you go, makes you feel terrible.
Right.
And so what we see is when people are walking around and they hate their dog, they hate their job, they hate where they live, they hate this, they feel miserable. They don't know that they actually could be getting this because they're walking around with a dirty brain, like literally a dirty brain. They haven't cleaned it properly because they're missing that window of deep, slow wave sleep. And they've got guncal beta amyloids and tau's all built up. They've got this adenosine built up. They haven't replenished the energy in their brain. And you just feel grindy and you feel awful and you feel like crap. And so this is when I say to people, if you feel unhinged, if you feel overwhelmed, if you feel sick, if you feel unhappy, just be in bed ready to sleep at 9:30, because it takes you about half an hour to go to sleep. And be ready to get those 2 hours before midnight for 2 weeks, and then come back and we'll talk about where you're at. And honestly, the amount of people, I had this one woman come back to me and said, you've literally saved my marriage. And I was like,
Wow.
"Oh my God." She said, "If I didn't know that, I would have just thought it was my husband." A minute I cleaned my brain and replenished all my cells and had my hormones get back into sync. I lost weight. I saw light. I felt the world was a different place. There's so many things that happen in there. You like blood sugar regulating, all your sex hormones get, replenished. It's in your ability to lose weight is very much predicated on that sleep. So if I can say anything,
It's amazing, isn't it, how much it impacts so much of your health and so much of your life. It's crazy.
there's not one system in your body that isn't impacted by sleep deprivation. Like not one system.
Yeah.
Because I mean, for humans, when you look from an evolutionary perspective, from a hunter-gatherer perspective, we weren't, running around at night with light in our eyeballs unless it was a really serious situation. So that's when you get that, you get these stress hormones that get activated late at night and you get this second wind and you can't go to sleep because you're tired but wired. So yeah, if you can do anything, remember that one.
No, it's a great tip. And I think the term dirty brain is probably the first time I've heard that as well. It kind of reminds me of back in the day when I used to drink that, if you ever have a hangover, it's the symptoms that you've described of having a dirty brain are quite similar. And there are, as I understand it, some studies where that sort of sleep deprivation has been compared to having a hangover as well, or alcohol,
Yeah.
drinking alcohol excessively as well. Are you across that?
Yeah, well, that just brings me to the next one. So we didn't quite finish the sleep cycle. So
Yeah.
that's what happens with deep slow wave sleep. And then you come up to REM sleep. And this relates to your question about alcohol. So REM sleep, rapid eye movement, it's a really unusual part of your sleep cycle when your brain looks like it's super awake. It's like the same brain waves as someone like having a very, amazing conversation, but your body's paralyzed, so you don't act out your dreams. So this is when you consolidate your memories. It also got a very strong forgetting function. There's a lot of stuff that happens throughout our day we really don't need to remember. So it's also fear conditioning. So you're basically working out what's important, what should I keep, what should I delete, how do I make sense of what's happened, and what should I be frightened of or what should I not be frightened of. And this all happens during REM. And so this happens in the later stages of the evening. So, around 2 a.m. is when your REM sleep really starts kicking in. And I like to use the analogy of a midnight librarian. So just imagine in the confines of your skull, you've got a woman there or a man with a bench, and in comes manila folders. And each of these folders is what happened during the day. And he or she goes, "Oh, that's interesting. Put that one in that box. That one, I link it with that memory from yesterday. That one's boring. Chuck that out. That one." And then sometimes you get a memory or something comes off across the desk and the midnight librarian goes, "Oh my God, I need executive orders to work out which box or do I keep me? What do I do with this?" And that's when you get woken up and the librarian will wake the boss up and says, "What should I do with this?" And, so many people will wake at exactly 2 a.m. or
Yeah.
3 a.m. every single morning. I honestly believe that is your midnight librarian just saying, "I need some help." And so what happens there are a lot of things that will push off our REM sleep. So for example, alcohol. Now, alcohol is actually so toxic to our system that your body will prioritize deep slow wave sleep to clear away the metabolic byproducts of alcohol, the toxic byproducts. And so what happens if you're drinking? Often you go to bed late anyway. So your REM sleep gets completely pushed off and you often will wake up in the morning with what I call hangxiety because your brain hasn't had the chance to clear away all of the memories from yesterday or what you said last night, the things that you did. And you haven't really sort of filed and organized the brain and put away, all the memories. And so you wake up just feeling really anxious and awful. So yeah, REM sleep's really important, but I think that some PTSD is that people believe is a sleep disorder because you're having a horrible recollection. You get woken up in REM sleep, you pop out, and you actually never get to file away or never get to make sense of that dream or that thought. And we believe that one of the processes of REM sleep is fear extinguishing. So basically, you're reliving that memory but without the emotional response. It's like REM sleep is kind of like exposure therapy. Your brain's trying to like desensitize you from this, but not let you forget the lesson from that. And when we see in PTSD, this gets dysregulated. So people just wake up because they feel so terrified and they never really get to process emotions. So what we see, if you are constantly kicking off your REM, from drinking or late nights or whatever, your ability to determine what you should be frightened of and what you should not be frightened of gets murky. So if you think about all humans are scared of snakes, right? So if we're walking along, we see a snake, like we get a reaction. And then your brain comes over and says, okay, that snake is dangerous, but you're okay. So next time you're walking along and you come across a garden hose and you're like, oh, it's a garden hose. And then you get a shock. And then your brain comes over and says, no, that's just a garden hose. And this all happens in REM sleep when you're remembering the day. Then if you cut off your REM sleep, you don't do that. So the next time you come across a garden hose, or if you come across a stick, or you come across a shadow that looks like a snake, you get scared of it. So your fear becomes extended not to the primary object, but it becomes, you get scared of many other things. So this is why people who don't get REM sleep get very anxious. Everything becomes frightening and scary because you're not engaging in proper fear processing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't know that about the fear processing because, I mean, that could impact so many people. And you think about children who might have sleep deprivation, how that might impact them long term as well. So they're the two stages of sleep. Is there any others?
Yeah, so there's non-REM and REM. So that's like you go light down to deep slow wave sleep, back up to REM, and that's the 90 minutes.
Right.
So there's four sleep stages.
And I've also heard that if you miss that window of, when you fall asleep, when you're meant to go to sleep around 9:30 at night, that garbage truck that comes through and cleans up the brain and gets rid of the dirty brain, that doesn't work? Or what about sleep debt? Does it still work?
It doesn't work as well. So I use the analogy. So imagine you are in charge of a huge big stadium. Now this stadium needs to be cleaned, it needs repairs, it's got lots of things happening. And throughout the day, you're running big football games or cricket games. And so we know that between 10 and 12, the stadium's going to be empty. So you as the boss send in 100 workers and there's no one there. They clean up all the rubbish, they fix all the broken seats, fix the lights. And then in those 2 hours, the 100 guys are out of there. So you have 100 man hours. Now, for whatever reason, you decide to put on a football game at between 10 and 12, and the guys can't get in there to clean up. You've got to send in little crews of 10 men here, there. They've got to walk around all of the patrons. They're still throwing rubbish on the floor as you're picking up the rubbish. They can't quite get to all the seats because people are sitting on them. People are eating. The workers are stressed out because they're, trying to do their job when all these things are happening. So you do get 100 man hours, but it's punctuated by interruptions. It's not as effective. And these workers are stressed. You can put them under that pressure for, 8 weeks, but you keep sending out workers having to do work in untenable conditions. Something's going to happen. So think of your sleep like that. It will happen, but there's a cost and the job won't get done as well. And your workers will get stressed out.
Do you think that women need sleep recommendations that are different to men's, or is it all the same?
People ask this question, do women need more sleep? And, there's much conjecture about this. What I believe is that women have the opportunity to be woken up a lot more. So women do have more sort of anxiety around sleep. They're probably more susceptible to rumination. We've got so much more load. We do have the burden of caretaking. So we're usually ones getting up for the kids, or if there's elderly parents, or you're worried about your teenagers, or the cat wants to go outside, you're probably the one getting up doing that. And then, of course, if there's a hormonal fluctuations. But generally, the men and women should be doing the same thing. Sleep consistency, going to bed within the same 20-minute window every night, if you can, anchoring, getting up at the same time, and trying to get those hours before sleep, watching what you eat before bed, reducing the alcohol. There's so many foods, there's so many drinks, so many activities that will really impact your ability to get into that deep, slow wave sleep.
And we'll get into some of those shortly. But I wanted to just explore how chronic sleep deprivation can impact the brain and in particular longevity of the long term, how we age.
Yes, early onset dementia is becoming an absolute epidemic. I think there's like 55 million people between the ages of 30 and 65 that are living with early onset dementia. And a lot of the researchers believe this is because of sleep deprivation. So in the interim, if you are sleep deprived, yes, you'll have cortisol, your digestion will be affected, your immune system will be affected. You feel all those personality consequences. You'll be grumpy, you'll be short, you'll perceive risk differently. you will be less empathetic. But long term is when you really see the detriment into your mind and your biological system. So if you look at not brain cleaning, you're more likely to get early onset menopause. You're more likely to have diabetes. You're more likely to have heart issues. We know that during deep slow wave sleep, your heart slows down considerably. So you actually beat less times when in slow wave sleep. And if you're not missing that, your heart is actually doing extra time that it doesn't really have to. Yeah, so there's, sleep apnea. We find that that's a really big issue if you're not addressing sleep apnea. It's often undiagnosed in women. So that's basically when you've got your obstructive airways is like either you've got lots of weight on you, it's pushing down on your epiglottis and closing up your mouth. So you're literally having like mini deaths. They're called, mini deaths throughout the night where you sort of wake up gasping for air and you're starving your brain of oxygen. So that's becoming more and more pronounced in our society. So people are putting on weight. So yeah, there is so many things that you would not relate to sleep deprivation that are 100% correlated with sleep deprivation from mental health disruption. We know that there's the concept of the mind after midnight. So we know that when people stay up after midnight, they are much more likely to engage in suicidal ideation, self-harm, much more likely to get depressed. And in fact, a research project said if everyone just went to bed an hour earlier, the global depression burden would increase by 23%. So
that's huge.
The data is very strong. Yeah.
I was looking at some data earlier from the Sleep Health Foundation. They said that around 40% of Australian adults experience some form of inadequate sleep. That's a significant number.
Yeah. And you can see why, because you think about social media, Netflix, all of the things that have, they've got behavioral scientists working out how to capture our attention and keep us logged in, viewing, activated. We know that there was a study that came out from 8 Sleep that reading the news before bed was one of the worst activities you could do for sleep. That was found to be the worst because, look at what's in the news at the moment.
Yeah.
So
why would you do that before you go to bed?
Things. Yeah. And then there's food. So if you think about, we know that if you're eating heavy protein before bed, your body would like to, get rid of that decomposing flesh out of the digestive system rather than have it sitting there. So digestion competes with deep slow wave sleep. So I always say if you want a really good night's sleep, have protein at lunch and then have vegetarian at night. There's also things like flavor enhancers in food. So MSG, or the stuff that makes food taste utterly delicious. It's in Chinese food, but it's also in all takeaway food, most restaurant food, and all packaged food. So you just got to look at the number 621. Now, flavor enhancer is monosodium glutamate. Now, glutamate is a neurotransmitter, which makes your brain fire. So I think we've all had this happen to us. We've eaten a really delicious meal. We've gotten sleepy, went to bed and had crazy dreams where you've just like nightmares and you've just woken up just feeling completely fried and really thirsty. So that is probably the MSG. And so I always say particularly to athletes or anyone who's got a big day, do not eat packaged food, eat completely clean food. So check the labels. I think that's a very undiagnosed reason for poor sleep. So yeah, sugar before bed. We know that if you eat sugary foods before bed, you sleep on average 26 minutes less than people who don't eat sugary snacks. So it's sort of thermogenic. It raises your blood pressure, raises your core body temperature, your heart rate. So try to avoid food for, if you can, 3 hours before bed.
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well. 2 to 3 hours before bed, you should try to avoid eating anything so that you can allow your body to digest everything. I need to tell my husband what you just said about sugar, though, because he's a notorious chocolate eater just before bed. And I'm like, stop eating that sugar.
Yeah, and the caffeine in there is terrible. Caffeine's got a 6-hour half-life. And, people often say to me, I can drink 5 cups of coffee and I'm fine. I'm like, that is one of the greatest myths. Now that we've got biometric capture devices, we know from research that they have lots of microarousals, and people who have 4 cups of coffee a day sleep on average over an hour less than people who don't drink coffee. So, they just don't realize it. They just don't feel it. But when you look at their actual brain activity, it definitely impacts you.
Yeah, they're probably not linking it to the caffeine because it's such an ingrained pattern of behavior that they have a cup of coffee at 3 PM slump time, and they're like, "This is what I need to get through the
Yeah.
day," and don't realize the impact that it's
Yeah.
having.
I say 3 o'clock is usually my absolute cutoff.
Yeah.
After 3.
Yeah, well, I'm fortunate that I've never drank coffee in my life. I don't like the taste of it, and
Ah,
I avoid I only drink
wow.
herbal teas, so but if I end up inadvertently having something that has caffeine in it, it
You can
impacts
feel
me
it.
significantly. I have such a bad night's sleep, so I really do try to avoid it. I'm very sensitive to it. I wanted to just explore how long we're meant to be sleeping because there's different opinions out there, right? Is it 7 hours? Is it 7.5? Is it 8 to 9? What is it, Dr. King? Explain to us what amount of sleep we should be getting each night, or is it different for different people?
Yes and no. So if you look at big population data, you're looking at tens of thousands of people. Humans need, on average, 7.5 hours sleep, and that's time asleep, not time in bed, because there is a difference there. If you want 7.5 hours sleep every night, you should be aiming to get into bed for about 8 hours. And so, whether you're in the hill tribes of Papua New Guinea, if you're in Germany, if you're in Cootamundra, anywhere, like this is what humans need. And so there is variation. And recent research has come out and said anyone who sleeps over 9 hours a night, if you're not a toddler, you're sick or an elite athlete, that is not good. People who sleep longer don't live as long. And it could be that needing to sleep longer is masking some deeper metabolic issue, or you're depressed, or something. So over 9 hours, not so good. Under 7 hours, not so good. But there are a few very lucky individuals who've I say won the genetic lotto, and they've got a short sleeping gene called the DEC2 gene, and they need 4 or 5 hours of sleep and are completely, unperturbed by it. They have no physiological decrements. And interestingly, we see a rather large overrepresentation of people with this gene who are in politics, who are CEOs, who are generals, entrepreneurs. Like Margaret Thatcher had it. The current Prime Minister of Japan has that gene. Who else? Winston Churchill. There are lots of people who in history who've done amazing things have had that gene because they can stay up all night reading and thinking and creating, and us gonk monsters have to have our 7.5 hours. But yeah, so it does change throughout your age brackets depending on what you're doing. Like kids need, teenagers need a good 10 hours. And in fact, teenagers' sleep cycles start to change when they get into puberty. So their melatonin gets produced later. Their sleep gets pushed back. So, 10 o'clock, they don't get tired until after that. And they actually need to sleep in more. As we, of course, if you're pregnant, breastfeeding, all those times will change where you need more sleep. But, we really need 7.5 hours. And as you get older, your sleep cycle goes earlier. You sort of fall asleep earlier, but your sleep gets more fragmented. You get more light sleep, not as much deep slow wave sleep. But you still need about 7.5 hours. And we see that people, as they get older, if they are not getting deep slow wave sleep, not getting REM sleep, they, do suffer a lot more than those who get their full hours. But, there's a lot of medical issues, a lot of medicines that will impact your sleep. We've got, beta blockers, push back melatonin, antidepressants, fracture your REM sleep. So there's a lot of heart condition medications that affect your sleep as well.
So it's really like peeling back the layers of an onion. If you do have some sort of sleep deprivation, you're trying to figure out what is causing that. And if you're on different medications or something else is going on in your life or experiencing stress, then it could be any number of those things by the sounds of it.
Yeah, ask your doctor if you are on if you're taking daily medications. Just it's worth asking your doctor. Can I take these tablets earlier? Are there some second generation, third generation medications that have come out that are are better for my sleep? Like there's some more anti-anxiety antidepressants that are better than the earlier generations. A lot of the antihistamines, they're also can give you sedated sleep, not proper sleep. So yeah, you really ask the question to your doctor, like, what is this doing to my sleep? And are there alternatives, or even can I just change the time of dosing?
If someone is getting the 7.5 hours sleep on a regular basis, but they're still waking up exhausted, what could be going wrong there?
Well, it could be a number of things. The sleep environment is maybe not conducive for deep sleep and quality sleep. So things people don't even realize, the amount of carbon dioxide in the room, if you've got a heater, pollution from outside, light pollution from, lights from outside, noise pollution. Also things like if you've got dust in your bed or if you're using really fragrant washing powders, they can actually irritate you. And, they've got endocrine disrupting fragrances in there, which can affect your sleep cycles. If you're sleeping next to someone who snores and who's got sleep apnea, you're worried about things. So you're waking up throughout the night. If you're drinking too much and having to go to the toilet a lot, or if you get up to the toilet and then you turn on the light and get light in your eyes, that will make it harder for you to get into sleep. Temperature as well. If your room's too hot and you don't have air conditioning, or, your room should be cold, actually. It should be around, 16, 17, 18 degrees. Then there's also, sleep apnea, restless legs, what you've eaten. If you're eating sugar and alcohol, and if you're having MSG and heavy proteins. So there is a huge constellation of factors that can affect you. And so in my book, Sleep First, I've got a personalized sleep formula, which you can go through and you can work out what are the factors within your life, psychological, environmental, behavioral, that are affecting your particular sleep. And then we've got, antidotes to, if you ticked that, then this is the things you should be doing or shouldn't be doing.
You mentioned somebody sleeping next to you and snoring. What are your thoughts on sleep divorce and having couples sleeping in separate rooms so they can get a good night's sleep?
Yeah, it's an issue of much conjecture. So there is some research to say that if you actually like your partner, sleeping next to them can actually lower your cortisol. And cortisol is one of the worst things you can do one of the worst hormones for sleep. And also having oxytocin. So oxytocin is the hormone you get when you cuddle, when you kiss, when you laugh, when you have sex, actually when you breastfeed. So, you want oxytocin. So if your partner gives you oxytocin, keep him around. If he's a snuffly, snoring, noisy thing, kick him out. You can get earphones, get the molded earplugs. There's also, some beds. If you can afford it, it's incredibly expensive, but this is my 100% most favorite piece of sleep tech is the 8 Sleep mattress. So this is a brilliant piece of technology. I was given it. I would 100% pay for it if I had to. But so basically it's a mattress topper where it differentially cools or heats you according to your body temperature, what your ambient temperature and what part of your sleep cycle you're at. And if you have hot flushes, it will cool your bed. Whereas your partner, it has a completely different temperature range and different formula for your partner. Now, the expensive one is in the actual bed. The minute they start snoring, their pillow or their head rises just slightly without disturbing you and then stops them from snoring.
Oh,
so
I need one of those.
It's called, yeah. I don't have that one. I've only got the mattress cover. It is brilliant. I love it. And if people do drink alcohol, a lot of the hangover is also dehydration. So it actually cools you so you don't get as bad a hangover. But I'm not advocating drinking. But it's called 8 Sleep. I love it.
Yeah.
And it tracks your heart rate, your respiration rate, your heart rate variability, all the sleep stages, and tells you all those things. But so sleep divorce, depending on how much you like each other.
Well, hopefully, if you have a partner in your life, you do like them and you want to sleep next to them. But I get it that I've experienced that with my own husband, that he's a snorer and he wakes me up at night. And a couple of times I've had to boot him out to another room just so I can get a good night's sleep. But sounds like I need to get...
Yeah, sugar, so blood glucose at night and alcohol, 2 big things for snoring. So if you tell them to cut those 2 out and see... Or tennis balls in the back of their pajamas.
Tennis balls.
Yeah. Or get them to learn the didgeridoo. Apparently that strengthens the muscles that become lax and implicated in snoring.
Okay.
So yeah, didgeridoo lessons.
His birthday is coming up. He might get a didgeridoo. Some interesting facts there. He doesn't drink alcohol, so I definitely think it's the sugar. Many women tell me that they're often physically tired but wired at night. What's happening neurologically there that's impacting sleep patterns?
Yeah, so what we know is that when you wake up in the morning and you first get photon or light exposure into your eyeballs, this sets your circadian rhythm. So you get sleepy around 16 hours after your first photon exposure, first light exposure. And what happens is so many of us will push past that natural sleep pressure. The evening you sit on the couch or you're doing something and you start to get sleepy. And we think, oh no, this is my time for me. This is, the only time and the whole day where I just get to do what I want to do without getting disrupted. And so we'll miss that sleep. It's like a bus. So a bus comes along, it's the express bus down to deep slow wave sleep. Get on that bus, you get down there quickly, smooth, clean, awesome bus. You miss that sleep pressure. Then another bus will come, but that bus will be bumpy, dirty. You stop along the way and you will be like on the bus like this. So because we miss that sleep pressure, our brain thinks, hang on a minute, what's going on? There's only a few reasons why humans would be up late at night. It's predators, it's war, it's like, something dangerous. And so we will squirt out adrenaline and cortisol and you get your second wind. Then you're like, oh my God, look how late it is. I've got to go to bed. And so you're probably, I don't know, snacking, eating, watching TV, lighting your eyeballs, and you jump into bed and you're like, go to sleep, go to sleep. Well, you actually have to like land like plane, so like a hot air balloon slowly going down. There's all these, very complicated chemical processes that have to happen. But you've been putting light in your eyes, you've been putting food in your face, you've been thinking things, you've missed that natural sleep pressure. And then you wonder why you're tired and wired. And you can't do that to your cells. The cells need to know, am I up or am I down? And they need to be consistent with this. And you need to like have consistency of these processes so they can just start getting to work. And if you disrupt them, they go all over the place and just start getting stressed out. And so you're lying there going, oh my God, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. And then when you're lying there and you get upset with yourself, got to get up, you produce more cortisol. Now, cortisol has a 30-minute half-life at least. So half an hour later, you're still like, go to sleep. You produce more cortisol and you get into this terrible spiral. So you really have to protect the pre-sleep routine, that pre-sleep moment, and do not miss that bus. Get on it.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you will pay for it.
Definitely, I'll experience paying for it. And so having a good sleep routine. The biohacking industry is so full of gadgets and trackers and supplements. And we haven't really touched on supplementation for helping to get a good night's sleep. In your view, what sleep interventions genuinely has strong evidence behind them and actually work?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. And, you've got to be careful because there's always new research coming up. Like magnesium glycinate has got really strong evidence, but it's more to the point, like not what do you do, what you don't do. So reducing alcohol, reducing caffeine, reducing pre-sleep activation, watching your body temperature. But the ones that I would recommend, so magnesium glycinate, there are, like herbal ones, like chamomile tea, they're good. There's, L-glycine, there's melatonin. Now, I really believe that it's very hard for you to put some natural remedies into a body that is full of cortisol, full of chemicals, full of caffeine, full of alcohol, and full of, I suppose, toxic thoughts. So the efficacy of these herbal things may be not so strong, but if you're a natural person, there is good evidence that these things work. Even some aromatherapy has been shown to work. But just going back to melatonin, I would be very, very careful about taking that. So particularly if you're getting it off the internet, if you're getting it from your doctor for a good reason, listen to your doctor, but you absolutely need to have washout periods, because if your body is getting free melatonin, it will reduce the amount of endogenous, the amount of natural stuff it produces, because your body's thinking, hey, I'm getting this for free. Why would I want to use my resources to make this expensive hormone? Also, there are so many processes we don't know that melatonin is impacting. It impacts your serotonin, your happy hormone. There's so many things. And it's absolutely terrifying that people are getting online and buying melatonin gummies and feeding it to their kids. Now, in doing research with this book, it was just insane to see like just the level of efficacy and how much of melatonin is actually in these gummies. That you can be buying them and they have zero melatonin in them, where some have got up to 400 times the amount that they're proclaiming to have. That's dangerous. And in fact, there's been several deaths of children in the US. It's one of the highest reasons kids are coming into the ER because they're getting hold of these gummy bears. They think they're lollies, and parents are handing it to them and they're thinking more is better. No, it's not. It's a very delicate metabolic process you're messing with. We don't even know what we're doing. So melatonin, no. Sleep tablets, really be careful with them. Only take them if you absolutely have to. They don't give you the sleep cycles. They sedate you like alcohol. You're not cycling through, so you're not doing the brain cleaning. So there's a lot of research that's been coming out lately saying that there's a very strong correlation to people who've had long-term sleep tablet use and dementia. because you're just not cleaning your brain. So have washout periods. Look at the smallest dose you can have the least amount of times if you need it. Talk to your doctor about it because, it's not good for sleep. Like trackers, I think they're good if you need to know where you're at and then you actually use it to change and do sleep behavioral interventions. But if it makes you anxious, don't worry about it. There's grounding sheets, low efficacy. There's so many things. There's those vagus nerve stimulators. I've never tried them. I do think that stimulating your vagus nerve is good. What else? Mouth taping.
Yes.
So little evidence for that. Although one thing that we do know is breathing through your nose increases the amount of nitric oxide you produce. So inside your paranasal sinuses, you have enzymes which produce nitric oxide. That is an extra calmative effect. It lowers your blood pressure. It opens up your airways. So if you breathe through your nose, it is actually better. It has a calmative effect. Also tells your brain, if your brain perceives air going over receptors on your lip, your brain thinks, oh, okay, you must be safe, you must be calm, you're not getting chased by a bear, because if you were getting chased by a bear, you'd be like breathing through your mouth. So breathing through your nose signals to your brain that you are safe, you are calm, and in that way it could be helpful, but the evidence is pretty low. I really, really believe in having a red light in your room before bed. So you can get them off the internet because it doesn't affect your circadian rhythm like blue light. So you just go into like eBay or Amazon and just look for red bedside table. I think I use it all the time, and I think my neighbors probably think I'm running some kind of like side hustle. So blue light blockers, evidence is really low for that. That's what does really affect you more is light. So the intensity, the lux of the light is really important. So I would not be worrying about getting blue light blockers. I would be just making sure that you're not getting light in your eyeballs. So if I'm going to sleep and I need to look at my phone, I always look at my phone on the side like that. I don't know if you can see. I don't bang light into my eyeballs. Yeah, turning down your lights. So I've put in strip light in my bathroom, really amber, motion activated. So when I go to the bathroom, it just comes on very dimly and then goes out. And I don't have to be turning on lights and fans and everything. That's been an absolute game changer. You can get them fairly cheaply online for just putting strip lights underneath your sink or on the floor. So nothing like eye height. But yeah, I think I can't think of any other gadgets or trackers. Is there any ones in particular you wanted to know about?
I think you've covered them all. I mean, blue light glasses was one of the ones that I was thinking of, which you've covered. I mean, I have found that it works for me, but it's probably more the fact that I'm blocking out light and I turn the lights down in the evening. I find that I don't wind down as well if I don't do that. Definitely find it a significant difference.
There's also the other part of the light spectrum. So there's blue and green as well as blue. And those glasses don't block those, and they probably do things as well. So yeah, the evidence is sparse on that.
So which sleep biohack gets far more attention than it deserves, do you think?
I think that when people start taking all the supplements, to go to sleep, and they are not doing all of the behavioral changes. So you can have some very expensive urine. So if you're taking glycine, melatonin, all these things and supplements that you've spent a lot of money on, and you are drinking coffee, and you're like, if you're doing hard charging exercise before bed, like you shouldn't do any exercise before bed that's over 50% of your maximum perceived output in the 4 hours before sleep, because it increases your resting heart rate and cortisol. So people are like, I suppose, like, a lot of biohackers and health bros are like, I got to do this, do this. And then there's no way that any of those supplements can anywhere get near your circadian rhythm, because you're so jacked up, you're so fried. And particularly if you're not looking after your mental space as well. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. You touched on phones before. How much damage are our phones actually doing to our sleep?
Oh, so bad. Like we're all, I call dopamine crackheads. It's really hard not to look at your phone. I'm terrible for it. So I've got some rules with my phone. I put it to grayscale at a certain period at night. I put it away from my bed. I don't use it as an alarm because it's too hard for me. I've got no self-control. And in fact, if you do sleep well and have sleep consistency, you shouldn't even need an alarm. You just wake up naturally. It's also what you're looking at. So when I was talking training with the Olympic athletes, I would be like, if you're in an Olympic village, would you leave your door open for anyone to walk in and say anything to you and affect your hormonal stress status at will? And they'll be like, no, that's crazy. I'm like, that is literally what you're doing if you're getting on your phone at night before a big event, because you have no idea what rage-baiting, provocative, awful things people will say to you. You don't know what news you're going to see. You don't know what town's bombed, who's had a tsunami, what interest rates are going. Like, you don't know what you're going to see, and you have no control. So you're literally making yourself entirely vulnerable to the whims of the algorithm. And so I think people should just know that thoughts become chemicals, and these chemicals affect your sleep. And thoughts are not just ephemeral things that go off into the ether. They actually have a very big biological and metabolic effect on you. So be very careful about your thoughts. And if you have got this, heavy diet of information coming into your eyeballs from your phone, you're out of control. And as I said before, 8 Sleep did a study, and they said, what are people doing before bed? And what's the most disruptive to sleep? And people were like watching movies in bed, reading a book in bed, scrolling, doom scrolling, or looking at the news, and news was by far the worst. So it's not only what you see, it's the light. So, depending on how old you are and what color your eyes are, light exposure into your eyeballs really pushes back your melatonin. So people who are young, people who've got blue eyes or light colored eyes are much more susceptible to light in their eyeballs. I call it Alan, artificial light at night. And Alan is not your friend, and you should not sleep with Alan.
I definitely don't sleep with Alan. I've got light coloured eyes, and I find the light definitely affects me. So Alan's out the window.
Alan is a naughty man, and he will ruin your sleep. So as you get older and you get cataracts over eyes, you're less, or dark eyes, you're less susceptible. So yeah, it's the light. It's the light. 1 to 2 hours, your melatonin will get pushed back if you're putting light into your eyeballs.
Yeah. Can you catch up on sleep?
A lot of people like the thought of it, sleep banking. Yes, you can catch up on sleep. So yeah, if you have, we see a sleep rebound. If you've been sleep deprived, you'll see a high propensity of deep slow wave sleep when you've been sleep deprived for a few hours, few days. Whether or not you can bank and whether you can get it back is kind of not true. It's kind of like you've spent the money, have accrued interest. So when people say, "Oh, I'm going to sleep bank," what people are really doing is just catching up on sleep deprivation they didn't know. Most people are sleep deprived. Most people are. Yeah, if you are going away or coming to a heavy period, you know you're going to be sleep deprived, try to get an hour early on each end, but the metabolic damage is kind of done.
Okay, let's do a quick fire round. I'm going to shoot some short, snappy questions at you and want to see what your thoughts are. What is the ideal bedroom temperature to sleep in?
18 degrees Celsius.
Coffee cutoff time?
Okay, this is the formula. Wake up, first light eyeballs, count 16 hours, -6. That's your cutoff time.
Okay. Alcohol and sleep, myth versus reality?
Total reality, unfortunately. Day drink if you really need to drink. But 3 hours beforehand, if you do have drinks, try to walk around the block, or go up and down stairs, star jumps if you're not too drunk. Or if hang on to the sink, and while you're brushing your teeth, do squats. Try and engage those big muscle groups. Get rid of the alcohol, get rid of the sugar.
Okay. You're a morning person or you're a night owl? Is it genetic?
So there is slight proclivities towards night owl or early bird, but that maximum is around 1 to 2 hours difference, where people have got 4 to 6 hours difference. So I've been listening to people tell me recently, I go to bed at 2 or 3. I'm like, what? Yeah, that's nothing. So if you are really, really late night owl like that, that is caffeine, that is gaming, that is Netflix, that is other things. So there is about a 1 to 2 genetic variance in people and their preference for night or morning.
Most underrated sleep habit?
Sleep consistency.
Most overrated sleep habit?
Catching up on the weekends. You're actually doing more damage. In fact, you're like creating social jet lag. So you're pushing out your sleep cycles, and also napping on the couch before bed. Don't nap after 3.
Okay. One thing you should never do before going to bed?
Fight your partner.
You're not going to sleep if you fight, guys.
Arguing.
Yeah.
Your partner.
What does your own bedtime routine look like?
It was terrible until I became a sleep researcher, and now all lights are dim, low light, nothing too excitatory. I do not have sugar. I do have a glass of red wine, low protein, mostly vegetarian. Music, talking. I'm at my farm, so I've got a fire, so that's beautiful, natural orange light. And I try to really look forward to going to bed now. And of course, my 8 sleep turns on. So when I get into bed, it's all snuggly and warm for me, and then I'll just drop my temperature accordingly. So yeah, I used to hate it, but I actually really look forward to going to bed. I'm just getting old.
And just finally, for every woman listening committed to just changing one thing about their sleep over the next 12 months, what would it be?
Get those 2 hours before midnight, and you'll see your ability to lose weight, to exercise, to be nice, to have increased cognitive capacity. All those things will change for you.
Awesome. Dr. Jemma King, it has been a delight to be able to do a deep dive into all things related to sleep. If people want to get in touch with you further or get a copy of your new book, Sleep First, where do they go to?
Yeah, so I post a lot of my stuff on LinkedIn, so Dr. Jemma King, PhD. I've got a website as well. It's just Google Jemma King, Dr. Jemma King. And the book is coming out on the 16th of July. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it from Booktopia. I have done an Audible, and that will be out, I believe, on the 27th. And through, Audibles and your podcasting platform. But so did I say Amazon, Booktopia, Audibles?
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Jemma.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's a wrap for today's podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And if you'd like to learn more about biohacking, go ahead and sign up on my website at www.biohack-her.com to get a free copy of my 5 top biohacks to get you kick-started. While you're there, you can also check out my blog page for more tips on biohacking. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, you can do so on Apple, Spotify, and Google Play. Let us know if there's anyone you'd like us to talk to in particular, and we'll endeavour to get them on the podcast. Until next time, remember to live well longer.